Welcome to volunteer leadership training. This is, as all things with volunteers, volunteer. You are not required to be here, and so not every leader's here, but we're glad that you're here. This is one of our best attended VLTs ever. I'm really excited about it. Our next one is coming up in May, end of May, so we'll send you those dates soon so you can plan. But again, this is just our opportunity to say thank you to you, to pour into you as a leader, and we're excited to do that. Here's the reality of these things. You didn't have to give us any time today, okay? You're not required. You don't have to be here. It's actually somewhat nice out for the first time in eternal winter, and you're here anyway, and like we don't take that lightly. So thank you for being here. Thanks for coming. I want to pray for us, and then we're going to have some fun before we jump into training. Just to give you a snapshot of the day, like I was saying when people were coming in, I'm going to do this first session of training. If you didn't get a note sheet, after prayer, raise your hand and we'll run you a note sheet. I'm going to do the first session of training, and then for those of you who do not have a breakout group, you will be done, but there is something special we're going to do at the end. I'll tell you that at the end. If you want to stick around an extra 5 or 10 minutes, you'll be able to do with us. Those of you who do have a breakout group, you should know, if you have one, you should know where you go by now. If not, they have maps, but you should pretty much have an idea where you go by now for those breakouts. And once your breakout's done, then you're done. But let me pray for us and we'll get started. Heavenly Father, as we've been learning about this whole thing called leadership, God, and as our staff has been learning lately, we don't love leadership, but we love redemption. And because we love redemption, we need to be great leaders. Because we are about the business of setting captives free, leadership matters. And so for the sake of our leadership here, as staff, as volunteers, as key ministry leads, and for the sake of our businesses and our homes and how we lead in every area of our life, I pray, God, that you would always make redemption our goal. I pray that you help us get better today because we spent time together and we grew together in your name. Amen. I want to talk to you about, I love, like I said in my prayer, because we love redemption, and we think that great leaders are needed, when we're trying to redeem a world that by and large doesn't want to have anything to do with Jesus Christ at all. So the more equipped we can be, the better. So I love teaching this stuff. I love digging in. We're going to look at a book. Basically, you won't have to read the book because I'm going to teach you right out of the book. But if you want to read the book, it's a book called Ladder Focus by a guy named Samuel Chand and a guy named Gerald Brooks. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. What in the world is ladder focus? What does it have to do with me as a leader? And basically, I'm going to read to you a little section in order to set the stage. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this. We don't have to take any notes on this, but this is the ladder story, okay? Waiting for someone to call me into the sanctuary, I stared out the window. As I meditated on the points I wanted to cover as a feature speaker at this conference, something in the street below caught my attention. A man stood on a ladder painting, not that uncommon a sight. I smiled, remembering my student days in Bible college. I had spent my summers doing that kind of work, yet I could not take my eyes off the man. For several minutes, I watched his graceful motions as he moved his brush and roller across the surface. As I watched, I noticed that this painter was only covering a limited area. He stretched as far as he could to the left, to the right, and even reached above his head. It also occurred to me that he was only going to the height that he was comfortable at, even though the extension ladder he was using could reach much higher. From my painting experience, I remembered that once I was on the ladder and had the necessary resources, I painted as much an area as I could before taking the additional time needed to climb down and relocate the ladder. It was an efficient method. Why isn't he going higher to paint all the way up? What would allow him to go higher, I asked myself, and then I saw the reason. No one was holding his ladder. By himself, the painter couldn't go any further. He'd done everything he could. He needed help. As I watched his graceful strokes, I realized the leadership parallels. Whether we're talking about churches, businesses, or nonprofit organizations, the effectiveness of a leader depends on the person or the persons holding the ladder, those who are in the supporting roles. The height that a visionary leader reaches on the ladder to their vision is not controlled by the leader's capabilities. It's not even controlled by how inspiring their vision might be. It's controlled by who's holding the ladder. Then another thought struck me. Those who hold the ladders are just as important as the leaders themselves. The visionaries could have all the training possible, the most expensive equipment, years of experience and knowledge about painting, and a blend of expertise and passion about their craft, but that's not the deciding factor. The ladder holder determines the height to which the ladder climber ascends. That's what we're going to talk about today. What is ladder focus? It's that the ladder holder determines the height to which the climber ascends. And here's the point of that. It's not all about the leader. It's not all about me. It's not all about the pastoral staff. It's not all about your favorite pastoral staff, your favorite volunteer staff, or any of that. It's not about the leader of your ministry. It doesn't matter how good any one of us is as a leader. It matters how good we are as a team. That's why this time together is so important, because it doesn't matter what I can do. It doesn't matter what you can do. It matters what we can do. It doesn't matter what the team can do together. Okay? And so today what I want to do is I want to spend some time talking about just a few key areas of what I would call ladder-focused teamwork. What does it look like to not have your best interest at heart, but have the best interest of your team at heart? And by the way, if you want to know, is this true of me? Do you say things to yourself like, this is what I would do differently? This is what I don't like? Or do you say, what can we do better? What can we be better at? How can we grow together? And so that kind of lays the foundation for where we're going. So let's just jump in. I want to look at a few key areas. The first is this: personal focus. Personal focus. How to keep your heart in the game. Okay? God wants to lead us. He doesn't want to force us. He doesn't want to make us do anything. He wants to help us be who we're created to be. At the Ransom, we say that we want to set captives free. We want to set people free to be who God made them to be. Now, arguably, we don't do that well all the time. Okay, we don't do it perfectly. But our goal, anyway, is to try to connect you with who God made you to be. That starts with a personal focus. You have to stay in tune with His will. You have to stay in tune with His call for your life. You cannot lead people where you're not going yourself, right? And so the idea is, how do we keep your antenna up? How do we keep you tuned in to the subtle leading of God? How do you personally stay focused on God and on where you're supposed to be going? Number one, you get a prayer life. By the way, having a prayer life is different than having a prayer list. Okay? Not the same thing. You'll be praying at any given time for dozens of people, dozens of problems, dozens of concerns, but that's your prayer list. That's not your prayer life. There are times that you have to have built into your life. I just got to have one actually this last week where it's just you and God. And you don't have to have an agenda. You don't have to go seeking anything. You just take time to be with Him. You spend time to be quiet and to listen. A great resource for this is the book Celebration of Discipline by Richard Foster. In that book, he does a whole chapter on prayer and then a whole other chapter on meditation that I would recommend that just teach you how to just find that time to be quiet and be still and just know that He's God. For me this last week, what that looked like was taking a few hours at the end of a day when I had a whole bunch of stuff I could have been doing and just going up to the cathedral because nobody was there and just sitting down and being quiet and being alone with God and listening and being overwhelmed by the grandeur of it and listening to some contemporary music in that ancient setting, you know. And at one point, there were some people who came in and they saw me there and I still had my jacket on and I was praying and I think they thought I was a homeless guy. And they pointed at me and left. But that was okay. It didn't bother me because I wasn't there to it was just about me and God being alone. You know what I mean? It was just about that quiet moment. And so you got to have a prayer life. How often do you take time to just spend with God, to listen and then to talk and then just mostly to pause and just be with Him? If the answer is never, that's obviously a problem, right? And so I want to give you a goal with this step. Schedule a time alone with God as soon as humanly possible. If it's 30 minutes, if it's an hour, find some place to go. Steal my idea, go to the cathedral. Find some place that works for you where you can just be with God. But you got to do that. Number two, invest in stillness. Okay? That kind of goes with number one, but too many of us get our self-worth from busyness. And by the way, I'm totally guilty of this. We gain our self-worth based on how busy my schedule is and how many appointments I have and how many, and so we get to the point where we find pride in being busy, even busy about ministry. right? And so we find pride in these things. Psychiatrist Edward Hollowell says this: many adults have the same symptom as children with ADD. So many are so overextended. We got so many things pulling us in different directions. Our attention's pulled in 1,000 directions, and we got our work and our kids' schedules and our sports and all this, and we suffer from what he calls culturally induced ADD. Right? Like the culture drives us to be busy, more busy than we need to. So the idea of being completely still in our culture is just a foreign idea. I want you to, the verse in Psalm 46, verse 10 is one of my favorite scriptures. It says, "Be still and know that he is God." And that's great. But if I could challenge you to do anything after you leave here, it's go home and read Psalm 46, verses 1 through 10. Because verses 1 through 9 talk about how the world is upside down and everything's going crazy and there's a war going on and things are falling apart, right? And in the middle of that is where God says, hey, whoa, be still. I got this. Know that I'm God. It's not that impressive that he's God unless it's happening in the midst of chaos, is it? And then in the middle of that, he can bring stillness into our life? That's incredible. And I want you to notice that the context of that verse is not calm. When life feels like it's crashing down and when everything's going crazy, in the midst of the craziness, in the midst of being overscheduled and having too much work to do and too many things you're volunteering for and too many things you're helping with and you get too many emails and too many, in the midst of all of that, be still and know. Because the point of what we're doing is that this is a choice. No one can make it for you. And so the goal here is fight to find time to be still. If you want a great resource on that, there's a book called The Selfless Way of Christ by Henry Nouwen that you can read in 45 minutes, but should read over like several weeks. And just let it soak in. Third, be clear about what's important. Be clear about what's important. The world wants to distract you with tons of non-essentials. Do you realize that? How many things in our day do we do that are non-essential? Ministry can be the same way. We can actually make you too busy with non-essentials. It's very possible to be overwhelmed with the activity of ministry, but that doesn't mean that you have the heart for ministry. Just because you're doing ministry doesn't mean you're doing ministry. Does that make sense? We have to have our heart fully engaged what we're doing. Are we juggling the things that we need to be juggling, or are we trying to keep 6 things in the air when we should really be doing 3 or 2? So as you think about, I know many of you are doing multiple things for us, and probably your small group lead, or your ministry lead is going to hate me for this. Well, they probably won't, but they would agree with me, but it's hard to admit. Some of you are doing too much. And you're giving half of yourself to 5 things instead of all of yourself to 2 things. And you need to figure out, what balls do I need to be juggling, because you can't keep doing this all the time. So these are some things that you can do for personal focus. Does that make sense? We got to have our heart right before we ever come to have this discussion about what we're doing for the kingdom. Once you get that right, and by the way, if you don't have that right, take like a couple weeks off and just refocus. Get your priorities straight, get yourself straight. Once we get there, then we can turn to the next thing, which is people focus. People focus is all about how you develop other leaders around you. A lot of you are in a position that's a ministry lead, and so you're having to develop leaders around you. And again, I go back and say, don't you burn yourself out trying to develop leaders around you if you're not dealing with your personal focus, right? But once you get the personal focus right, now we got to develop leaders. John Maxwell says, when you attract a follower, you add to a church. But when you develop a leader, you multiply the church. And I think that's so true. And leaders typically rely on one of 3 strategies to accomplish their mission. Okay, so let's just put you in an imaginary scenario, okay? You're leading first grade children's on Sunday morning, okay? We'll just use that as an imaginary scenario. And you really need the help of 2 or 3 great leaders. You're doing it all yourself. There's kids hanging from the ceiling and crazy things happening, and people were stacking them up because we just don't know where to put them. You really need some more people. But you don't just want bodies in the room, right? You want people who care about these kids, who love these kids. There are not a lot of those just hanging around, right? Because they haven't been trained up. So here's one of the 3 scenarios. You could do any one of these 3. Number 1, you could do it yourself. How many of you have ever been guilty of going, I really need help right now, but then I'd have to, no, I'm just going to do it myself. Honesty time, right? The problem with that is it's too much work. It'll work in a small church, it'll work in a small ministry for a while, and it appeals to leaders who need that sense of control, the control freaks. The problem is it's not sustainable long term, right? Or you could do number two. If you're like in my position, or apply this to your business, you could hire it out. You know the problem with hiring it out? It costs like money, right? The problem with this one is it costs too much. You can do that. Sometimes it's the right call. Sometimes it's grown so fast, you got to hire a staff, but a lot of time that's not the answer. There are people around us who have the skills, who have our DNA. They just need to be discovered. They need to be trained up. People who would love to do it, and they just don't even know. And yeah, sometimes you do need a new staff, but usually the cost is too high. I heard a statement recently that really convicted me. It says, no amount of staff will make up for a leaderless laity. You can't buy enough staff to make up for a leaderless laity. So then there's a third option, is you develop leaders. There's a problem with this one too. It takes time. Man, it takes more investment. Homegrown leaders are without question the best because they've got the DNA, they know what you're all about. The problem is it requires a large time investment, which is why most of us don't do it. Because for some of us, time's worth more than money. You know, it's our most valuable resource. But if the church is going to last, or if whatever you're leading is going to last, it's got to keep growing. And if you're going to keep growing, it's imperative that you develop leaders. This is the most effective way to minister. It's a better use of resources, and it's setting people free to be who God made them to be. And so when we realize this, we need to realize that other people can bring the ministry to a place that we can't reach alone. That's the hardest part for me. Because I know how I want it done. And if I let somebody else do it, they're going to get it done, but they're going to do it a little differently, or not as good in my opinion, or not as how I would have done it. If they can do it 80% as well as you, let it go. Empower that leader, train him up, and let it go. So, if developing leaders is the best reason or best thing to do, why do more people not do it? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One of them is pressing demands. Any of you busy? I mean, really, right? By the time we get we start to look at our plate and everything that we have to do, it's easy to get caught up in the daily responsibilities of life and work and family and all of this. And so what happens is pressure starts mounting and you get caught up in the urgency of the moment. You ever felt that? You feel like you're being pulled in 100 different directions, and you know how much time it takes to develop leaders, and you're like, I don't have the time, it's in short supply, and so we don't do it. Samuel Chan, who wrote the book, says this: when the press of the daily responsibilities and the urgency of the moment keep us from developing leaders, we've let the good become the enemy of the best. When the press of daily responsibilities and the urgency of the moment keep us from developing leaders, we've let the good become the enemy of the best. So we can't let our pressing demands keep us from doing what still needs to be done, right? Another reason that we don't do this is past disappointments. If you are leading, and you've done it for more than about 10 minutes, you've had somebody let you down. You've had that volunteer worship leader that was going to show up and then they didn't, right? Or you had that person that said they would cover that and then they didn't show up. Or you had the person do it and say they could do it and then they did it and they bombed, right? You've been let down. We think this is like original to us. But this happened all the time in Scripture. Think about Moses, right? Moses goes up on Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. He's with God. He leaves his brother Aaron in charge, his own brother in charge. And he comes down the mountain, and they're having like a frat party, right? They're having a wild, crazy party. The leadership that he trusted seriously blew it. And Aaron, he's like, oh, I don't know what happened. We were hanging out, and then the people brought me all this gold, and I put it in the fire, and this calf just came out, right? Like, sure it did. Sure, you had nothing to do with it, right? You're my own brother, and you let me down, right? And when we raise up leaders, there are always going to be leaders who disappoint. It's just going to happen. Usually, it's those that are closest to you. It's those that you trust the most. And because we get hurt, we just go, I don't think I'm going to do that again. When the reality is, we need to re-risk. Chan goes on to say, if we aren't willing to encounter an Aaron who might disappoint us, we'll never find the Joshua who carry on after us. Do not miss Joshua because you had Aaron. We got to keep training up leaders. Another reason is the fear of vulnerability. In order to do this well, you've got to let others get close to you. You've got to let others see the real you. If you're going to develop great leaders, you have to let them get close enough to see your heart, because as a leader, you cannot always just put your best foot forward. Sometimes you got to reveal your doubts and be like, yeah, I'm scared right now. Like, this is a big step. And share your fears. You have to be willing to risk trusting these people as you pour into them. But fear of vulnerability will a lot of times keep us from pouring in. Another one is repeating a pattern. If you've never been mentored, if you've never had somebody pour into you, you might say, I don't know how to do this. It probably doesn't come naturally to you. You're thinking, why should I pour into somebody else? I never had anybody pour into me. That's why you should pour into somebody else. Because you never had anybody pour into you and you're not where you want to be, right? And so we tend to do what we know, and once a behavior is ingrained, it's difficult to break. But so leaders who aren't mentored don't mentor. But if we continue down that path, we're not gonna develop any more leaders. We cannot pass on what we don't possess, right? And so just because it's what you know, that doesn't make it right. Just because it's not what you've done doesn't mean it's the right way to handle it. And so let's not repeat the pattern. Let's break the cycle. Let's train up leaders around us. And so here's a key. Don't confuse training with developing. Don't confuse training with developing. Training focuses on tasks, okay? I need you to carry this from here and put it there. There, now you're trained. You know what you're supposed to do, right? No. Training focuses on tasks and it's less risky. Developing focuses on people, not on tasks. We need to be about developing people first because we care about them, and then training them to do the task. If we just train people, if we just give them jobs but we don't develop them, then we're caring more about what we need than we are about the people. And this can't be about that. In ministry, in leadership, you have to want more for the people that you're developing than you want from them. We did Plugged In this morning. Had 40 people come and get plugged in, right? If we approach that and we say, we're doing Plugged In because we need volunteers, we've already lost. If we're saying we're doing Plugged In because we want people to be set free to be who God made them to be, now we're winning. You see the difference? That motivation matters. So don't confuse training with developing. We want to develop people first just because we want to pour into their life. And then we can train them to do what we need them to do. So here's 4 types of leaders that you might find yourself having to develop in your ministry or in your area. And by the way, if you're sitting in here and you're going, that's great, but I'm not the leader of the ministry, I'm just a volunteer. Well, you could still bring somebody alongside you and raise them up. You don't have to be the leader. In fact, I'm guessing your leaders would love it if you would invite somebody alongside you and raise them up. They would think that was phenomenal. Okay? So if you would call yourself a regular old volunteer, you need to be doing this stuff. Like this is for all of us, okay? So 4 types of leaders you can develop around you. First is positional. There are some people that the right way to train them up is they want to do something. Just give them a job, right? They have a certain skill that's very specific. They say, I'm good at graphic design, okay? So we're going to use them in graphic design, if that's where they want to be. Well, let's use your skills. Or maybe they're good at organizing, or they're good at accounting, or they want to work with kids. They're specific. They know, I feel called to kids ministry. Help them discover and apply that talent, okay? Focus their training on the need to maximize the gift to be able to do what they're called to do. That's what we think of as maybe the only place we plug in leaders, right? Well, I just find people and I find their fit and I just put them there, right? And that's the only leadership. No, there's other ones too. Some leaders that will come, they're entrepreneurial. They're entrepreneurial. My advice with an entrepreneurial leader, or if you don't know how to spell entrepreneur, just write startup. A startup leader. These are the crazy business. They always want to start a new business. They all want to do. They always got these ideas. Here's the key with those leaders: listen to them, because they have ideas and stuff. Okay, they have a pioneer spirit. They have a great sense of things, and if you can figure out how to leverage allow them to help you leverage your assets to full capacity. Like the church is not a business, but it has business components, and this is where this leader flourishes. Now, this level takes more trust than the other 3 levels, by the way. To say, yeah, dream. Go ahead and dream. But if you've got entrepreneurial or startup leaders around you, listen to them. Just listen to what they're saying. When they bring like their 50th crazy idea, and they're like, hey, maybe our church could do this, and you're tempted to just go, oh, here we go again. No, listen to them. They might actually have a good idea. They'll probably have 49 bad ones, right? But they just verbally process. And then that 50th one comes out and you're like, that's it. That's the one we've been waiting for. Empower these leaders. A third is administrative. I'm going to tell you right now, if you find administrative leaders around you and they're any good and you trust them as a human being, you trust them as a Christian, trust them with your administration, okay? Because we are so short of people with management gifts, right? People who can figure it out. And it doesn't matter what ministry you're talking about. I'm going to use Wayne because I just happen to see him out of my corner of my eye. Wayne heads our compassion ministry. He's a compassionate guy. He loves people. Wayne and Teresa do this, and they love people. But it's amazing when you get on the backside of it how much administration it is, right? Like insane. 70% administration to make one event happen, right? It's not what you think. If we have these people, these are the people that have the ability to connect A to B. These people don't need as much training. You just say, hey, this is what's working good and this is what's not working good. Can you fix this? And then you just equip them to see what needs to be changed and implement. Tyler and Lori, can I pick on you guys? Okay, I just did. Okay, so then now that cat's out of the bag. Tyler and Lori are ridiculously administrative. We didn't know it because they're right in front of our faces and we're dumb, right? So the way we find it out is that we do the closet and they help us gather information and they bring Angel a 5-page thing with graphs and spreadsheets, and Angel is running laps through the office telling everybody, look what they did, this is so awesome, And we didn't even know what we needed, but they did it and we're like, this is so helpful. So you better believe we're like, hey, whatever you want to you just fix it, right? Because we're right? So if you got people with administrative gifts, utilize them. Give them trust. Thanks for letting me pick on you guys. The fourth one is spiritual. If you got spiritual people around you, if you got people who are coming to you and they're like, hey, I don't really, I don't know if I could actually do anything for the ministry, but is there anything I can be praying about? You know what our normal thing to do with people like this is? Oh, you don't want to get involved, but you want to pray? Oh, that's convenient. Right? Why don't you get your butt busy and do something? They want to. They just asked you, right? There are certain people that are devoted to the word and prayer. Please utilize that. Let them cover your ministry in prayer. Let them come into your ministry area and pray in the space over what's going to happen before you get there, okay? These are people that, if you want to do a devotional or a spiritual element, you got somebody in the group that just has that natural, let them own that. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to always be you. Let them lead in times of corporate prayer. Let them lead your team through prayer devotion. Harness their spiritual inclination. Does that make sense? So those are all people, folks. Those are things we can do for other people. Then letter C is platform focus. Now, you're not going to probably stand up here, but how do you communicate and maintain what you're trying to get done, your vision? How do you communicate and maintain your vision? Especially if you are just, Joe average, I just want to be a volunteer. Well, how do you, when you tell somebody, I work with a children's ministry, and they go, oh, you must hate that. How do you explain to them, no, I love it because I'm not just, this isn't babysitting. This is ministry, and this is why. How do you communicate that vision? So Bill Hybels from Willow Creek says, you can never underestimate the amount of energy and frequency you must give to vision casting. You can never underestimate it. People are drawn by our vision. Now, as much as we like to believe that people are drawn because of our location, or because of our building, or because of our dynamic worship, or because of our inspired preaching, what draws people, truthfully, is who we are. What draws people is what we stand for. And what will draw people to your ministry area? whether it's inside or outside the doors of the church, is what you stand for. People are drawn by that, okay? What is our vision? Does anybody know? Setting captives free. Okay, what is the vision of your ministry area? Yeah, it's a trick question. It's setting captives free. Here's what I want you to understand. We as a church have one vision. So when you serve in kids ministry, it's setting captives free. When you lead a teen life group, that's setting captives free. When you serve coffee in the lobby, it's setting captives free. Everything we do it why we do it, the way we do it, with one goal in mind. When we say no to a ministry, it's because we don't think it will enable us to set captives free. When we say yes to a ministry, it's because we feel called to do that in setting captives free. That's our deciding factor for everything. Does your team know that? Do the volunteers next to you know that? When you're serving in first impression or guest services and you're making coffee and the person serving next to you making coffee is like, I'm getting really sick of making coffee every Sunday. I can't believe how much coffee these people drink. 15 pounds of coffee a week. That's insane. What is wrong with you people? You know, and that person's next to you. How is it not your job to step in and say, no, that's not what we're doing. You serve coffee? That's not what I do. See, I set captives free. I take one more barrier away from somebody. When they can get that cup of coffee, which is a comfort thing, right? And then they can bring it into the worship center and we're like not worried about our chairs and carpet and stuff. Their guard's down, right? You have set them free to hear the gospel, right? That's what we do. Do the people around you know that you play a part in that? Yes, your leaders grasp the vision, but if we don't share that vision, if we don't grasp it ourselves, people attending, people coming aren't going to catch it either. And without a vision, you might be leading people, but where? Like, where are you going? You know, I think the saying goes, if you don't have a vision and you're leading people, you're just out wandering around, right? And also, if you don't have a vision and you think people are following you, just look behind. If nobody's there, you're just out for a walk, right? What are you doing to lead people somewhere? People need to know what the target is. Imagine when I got ready to hire Wandy, we were in Atlanta, and I was down there for the 25th anniversary of 12 Stone Church, and Wandy and I had like half a day to hang out, and so we went out. He had a pistol, so we went to a shooting range, and we just shot guns. It was fun, right? We just had fun. I wanted him to know that if he didn't do the job right, I could kill him. But imagine being at a shooting range, right? Okay, now, imagine you're at the shooting range, but everybody has a different understanding of where to point the gun. That makes for an adventure, right? People have to know what the bullseye is, right? Thankfully, it's downrange, okay? People have to know what the bullseye is and what we're doing. Imagine a ministry room where everybody thinks you're pointed at a different target. Right? An effective vision keeps everyone on target. And it saves you from friendly fire. Friendly fire, by the way, in ministry is when there's a ministry and it's going one direction and a volunteer with really good ideas tries to take it another one and says, you know what we should do differently? You know what we really need to be doing? Hey, this is what's wrong. This is what's broken. That's friendly fire. Right? Let's not shoot each other. Let's know what the vision is. Let's aim at that. It's doing the right things for the right reason. Okay? The easy thing in ministry is to do a lot of good things, but spend all of our time doing the good things and we never actually get to the God thing, right? We never actually hit the target. And I want to be different because we're hitting the target. Habakkuk 2:2 says, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. Okay? Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. You want to be so confident where we're going, you can run to the target because it was laid out clear for you. So, constructing an effective vision, it must be portable. People need to be able to carry it. Anyone in the congregation should be able to grasp what the vision is, communicate it clearly, explain it to someone else, write it out on the back of a napkin. You know, it shouldn't have to be a 3-page document. You can tell people what setting captives free is, what worship free, live free, serve free is, on the back of a napkin. And yet it's so deep, isn't it? What that includes. Setting captives free is so much wider than salvation, isn't it? It's a big mess, and it's so much fun, but you can still explain it. It's portable. It's got to be memorable. You cannot overcomplicate it. You got to keep it simple. It should, like I said, you can write it on a napkin. It should be short enough to fit on a T-shirt. If you got a vision and it starts here and then it ends back like down here, right? Effectively equipping to lead for generations and leading them to this and doing this. No. Just like, what are you doing? It's got to be memorable, right? It's got to be motivational. It should make people go, yes, I want to carry that. I want to do that. I want to set captives free. In fact, it should be so catchy that people can go, I want to set captives free. What does that mean? Right? Before they even fully grasp it, they're like, ooh, yes, yes, I want to do that. If no one's excited, it's not effective, and you will lose volunteers. Again, if you're just serving coffee, if you're just serving in youth ministry, man, there's a lot of reasons to not serve in youth ministry. That list is long. But if you're setting teenagers free for the kingdom, that one reason will keep me, I'll put up with all kinds of things for that, right? And then another one is it's got to be planted deep. Vision is affected by gravity. It trickles down, okay? It doesn't matter how much you get it. If you don't pass it on to those who report to you or those around you, if you don't expect your team to pass it on to take your time to be intentional, to share stories that reiterate the vision, testimonies, even when the team gets it and you think, oh, finally I'm done, it's trickled all the way, you're not done because it leaks. The stinking thing leaks. No, I've told you we're doing this because of this. I've told you 100 times. Yeah, but I forgot. It leaks. Even when your team gets it, you got to keep doing it. Real success is when Sioux Falls knows our vision, even when they don't attend here. Oh, you're that church that like serves and sets captives free and stuff. We hear people say that. People who don't go here, they just go, oh, the Ransom? Oh, I've heard about you. What have you heard? That's what always makes me nervous. Oh, I've heard about you. What have you heard? Ooh. Praise God, it comes back to you. You know what it always comes back to? You're that church that loves the community. You're that church that gives away all the turkeys. You're that church that has like small groups or life groups or something like all over town, right? Those are the things we hear. Praise the Lord, because it's planted deep, and that's what setting captives free has to be. D, program focus. Okay, so let's say we get everybody on the same vision. Fantastic, right? How do you keep everyone there? Because if this stuff leaks, one of the challenges of leadership is keeping everyone focused. Whether it's congregation or volunteer staff or paid staff, like this stuff's always changing. Life's always changing. It's always shifting. Is it not true? People tend to see church like it was when they first came. Right? So there are some in this room who have been attending this church since the very beginning. So you remember it being like 50 people in a movie theater or 100 people in a movie theater, right? And it's so easy to look at that and go, this doesn't look like that anymore. Something must be broken. The problem is there are 13, 14. I think with our Harrisburg campus and our nursing home services, we had over 1,400 people this last week. We had 1,500 people if you count those who watched online. Okay, that's insane. It's not that, but we tend to go you get saved and that song by Rich Mullins was playing, right? When you went to the altar. And so now every church you go to, you're like, what? You know what we really need to do? We need to sing that Rich Mullins song, right? Because it's special to you, right? You joined a ministry and you really loved the ministry. Now, you might have hated everything else about the church, but you love that ministry, right? So then you leave the church and you go to another church and you say, you know what we really need to do? The church that I was at, you know the one I hated, that I left, but they did this thing that I liked. We got to do, because we tend to, whatever stage the church is when we come in, we want it to be that forever, right? Because it feels, I like it. So now life groups are growing, and we're talking to some of the life groups, and we're saying, hey, we really want you to plant a group out of your group. And they're going, I don't want to do that because I want it to be this, and this is different, right? And that's hard. So how do you manage this? I mean, it's easy to lose sight where we're headed. It's easy to lose sight of why we're doing what we're doing. And like people, vision develops in stages, and one of the greatest challenges is keeping everybody focused. And so here's some challenges that cause leaders to lose focus. The first is this: chasing the latest fad. There's always another conference or another sermon you heard or another model or strategy, right? And that's not a bad thing. You should go and we should grow and we should do those things. The danger is when you take those things and you don't contextualize. So you say, oh, at this conference I heard they're doing small groups now, so we're going to completely trash small groups and we're going to do that now. And then you do that for 2 years, and then you go to another conference. But you don't contextualize it to who you are. Or you say, they're doing this in kids ministry, so we got to do that now. And we get always caught up in the newest thing, right? Everything we do cannot be caught up in the newest thing. We need to ask ourselves, how does this fit our vision? We're gonna do trainings like this, and you're gonna hear something here that makes you go, ooh, that's so good. And you're gonna be tempted to go to your ministry leader and go, hey, remember at the training, Pastor Phil said this, we got to change this, and this. And what you need to do is go, okay, no, what does that mean for our ministry? Because we can't just chase the latest fad. What's the win? How does the strategy help or hurt our goals? Does that make sense? So we can't always chase the latest thing. The second temptation is the temptation to embrace an extreme view. In our zeal, in our passion, it's easy to develop an unbalanced position. And we got to be careful about focusing on things that are non-essential. We are passionate about our ministry area, and that's good. But what it's really easy to do is be like, why this church doesn't care about our ministry? They were talking about that other ministry, and why doesn't everybody care about the closet? Why doesn't everybody care about safe families for children? If they had a heart, they would care. What's wrong with you people? Don't you know these kids don't have places to go? What's wrong? Are you broken? And because we're so passionate, but we forget that we're not the only ministry. We're part of something bigger here, aren't we? We're part of a kingdom. Or you have that ministry idea and you're like, if you really care about Jesus and people, you'll start doing this ministry. And we go, we're not going to do that ministry. And then people hate us because we didn't do their ministry. But again, it's part of a bigger picture. Does that make sense? So the temptation is to embrace the extreme view. Third, refusing good ideas. This may actually surprise you, but sometimes other people have them. Not just you, right? You can get so passionate about what you're doing and how you, when we get a vision in our heads, a lot of time we see it playing out the way we want it to play out, and so we put blinders on, and we refuse what could be really, really beneficial advice because it didn't come out of our head, right? I will be the first to admit, at the Ransom Church currently, I have a staff I completely trust, right? Hands off. I can't remember the last ministry decision that was made that was done the way I would have done it. I can't. I cast the vision. That vision gets heard, gets interpreted, but everybody's got their own personalities, your unique leadership styles. Will doesn't do connections the way I would do connections. Wandy doesn't do life groups the way, Phil doesn't lead worship the way I would lead worship. Thank goodness. Right? On all three accounts. Because they're the person God picked and put in that spot. And I trust him in that. But my desire, my ownership of it makes me want to go, we need the discernment to know when an idea is just distracting or when it's actually a good idea and we just don't want to listen. Does that make sense? Number 4, confusing the urgent with the important. Urgent is the this one's my arch enemy. This urgency thing is my arch enemy. This is my nemesis. If I had a superhero nemesis, it would be urgency, right? This is true at work. It's true with my family. It's true with my friends. It's true a lot of times for you as a volunteer. Jesus was the master of discerning what's truly important because there's always something urgent, right? Everything's screaming in your face. It's got to be done right now. It's urgent, right? Urgent is louder than important. But you have to be able to strain to know what really matters. For example, we got deadlines at work that are urgent, right? Sunday's coming. Time with my kids, it's more important. It's more important. I had some things I really needed to get done yesterday. You know what I did last night? I watched part of a movie with my kids. We ate chocolate Jello pudding and marshmallows, and it was fantastic. And you know what? It was more important than the urgent things I could have done. Right? So we gotta know. Like Andy Stanley puts it this way. He says, "Don't give up what is unique to you. Don't give up what's unique to you for something that someone else can do." There are things only you can do. There are parts of your role that someone else can do. And they're the parts that you're called to do. Don't hold tightly to the tasks anyone can do. Hold tightly to what's unique to you. Right? We tend to do exactly the opposite. And we drop what's unique to us, and it never gets done because we're too busy doing the tasks that anybody could do. So what's truly important in your ministry and not just urgent? Number 5, listening to the invisible crowd. If you are judging your actions or decisions by what reaction you might get, if you're judging it by what people might say, or how that move might be perceived, that's called listening to the invisible crowd. Because they haven't said it yet. They haven't perceived it that way yet. Right? It's the most silent form of peer pressure. If you're like, we can't do that because so-and-so wouldn't like it. Well, first of all, they didn't say that yet. Second of all, even if they do, is it still the right thing to do? Well, so don't listen to the invisible crowd. Number 6, forgetting what God called us to do. Forgetting what God called us to do. Churches are filled with needs and activity and work. And guess what? If you're on like multiple teams and you let yourself be recruited, we'll probably still recruit you. Shame on us because we don't do as good a job policing that as we probably should. But listen, what are you called to do? Okay? It's easy to lose clarity and vision. Don't set aside your call for anything. In fact, set aside other things for your call. And you have one here. Okay? So here are some symptoms you're beginning to lose your way. Because like anything, the temptation in ministry is to try to get to the point where you can put the thing on cruise control. You know what I mean? So here are some observable signs and symptoms of losing your way. And I want you to self-diagnose. And if you struggle with one of these, I want you to see your leader. Okay? And I want you to talk to him about it. Set up a time to talk to him about it and just say, hey, I've noticed this in my life. Can you, so that you guys can pray together, you can refocus, you can get your passion back, whatever you need to do, right? One of them is called compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue. If you are in ministry, it doesn't matter what role you do, whether you think it's like, oh, I'm just doing this task. No, it's not. If you're in ministry and you interact with human beings in your ministry, you will have challenges. And a steady diet of challenges becomes draining. And that's when compassion fatigue sets in. If we don't learn to detach, we can get sucked into other people's problems, can't we? Like, are there not enough hurt people here to you could just get sucked into it, right? Now, that doesn't mean you don't care. But there are times when you just need to step away. And you just need to, recharge your battery so that you can re-engage. And so you need to practice something called detached concern. Detached concern. Here's what detached concern looks like. Detached concern is when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm writing a sermon for 1,400 people. Okay? It's the sermon that our 3 groups are going to be based on. So, there are going to be 1,400 people who do this. There are going to be 400 people who go through it in an R3, dive deeper, right? This matters to a lot of people. And somebody comes into my office, and I turn around, and they sit down on my couch, and the guy says, my wife just left me. Right now, this doesn't matter, right? I have detached myself from it, and I am fully engaged right here. My heart is with this person. We want to help them take the next steps. Detached concern then allows me, without being swallowed alive, to help this person set up the next steps with them, get them connected with somebody who can walk deeper with them, and then turn back around and refocus on this. Does that make sense? It's not that I don't care about this. It's not that I don't care about this. It's just that if I only focus on this, 1,400 people don't get what they need on Sunday. But if I just focus on this, we've forgotten about the individual, and we are not going to do that. And so you have to be able to practice this. And what that takes is scheduling breaks, taking a vacation, planning them before you need them, before you're burnt out, you know. No matter how much your ministry needs you to serve all 4 Sundays, if you need a Sunday off, it's taking it. You know what I mean? The second thing we can fall into is crisis mode living. And this goes along with the first. It's easy to get drawn into every crisis at church or to turn every situation in church into a crisis. Thank you very much for not doing that. But the result is when everything becomes a crisis, you're no longer working from a predetermined list of priorities, right? You're no longer saying, this is the vision, this is where we're going, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Now you're just living from one crisis to another crisis to another crisis. You're just managing, right? Now you're focused on the urgent, not the important. We cannot afford to regard everything as the biggest problem this church has ever seen. Does that make sense? We cannot afford to regard everything as a problem that immediately needs to be solved. And without the right perspective, we'll just see everything as a problem. We don't see ministry opportunities, we just see another chore. And when the people who come to you with their hurts and the things that you have to face in ministry are just another problem, another chore, instead of another ministry opportunity, that's when you can go, I'm starting to, I just need to take a week off, get some perspective, right? I just need to breathe. A third one is complacency. When you get to the point where you're no longer, this happened in our church when we got to the point where we're no longer fighting for survival. There was a time where every Sunday it was like, well, are we getting paid this week? I don't know, we'll find out, you know. When you get to the point where you're not fighting for survival and things are going well, it's easy to get into a routine, isn't it? You just sit back and do this, right? And just get comfortable. It's like putting your car on the cruise control and you begin operating in your ministry without full energy, without full effort. You're present in body, but you're absent in spirit. When you begin to get complacent, like when you're no longer moved by a 5-year-old kid whose soul is changed, or a person you pray with at the altar, or someone that you've been praying for months and they come to church and you're just like, oh, cool, they came, but you're not moved by that anymore. You're getting complacent. It's time to just get some perspective. And then number 4 is cynicism. And this just happens naturally in ministry because our own overexposure to human nature produces this. Okay? When you're burned and you're tired and your volunteer fails to show up, or the volunteer who's supposed to be serving alongside you fails to show up again, and you're having to run coffee pots like twice as many again, right? Skepticism starts to grow. And cynicism needs very little. Cynicism is like those weeds that, do you remember last summer? I know it's hard to believe in this place it was ever this hot, but last summer it was like 1,000 degrees, and nothing was green anywhere except the weeds in my sidewalk. They were growing like crazy, right? Cynicism is like that. It grows, it needs little to no nurturing, and it gets deep, right? It gets to the point where gradually we no longer believe the best about people in general. And when everyone you lead is a problem, where can you take them? Right? So those are some things to look out for. So our goal through volunteer leadership training and volunteer appreciation is to combat this. We want to combat it 3 ways. And I would challenge you to combat it in your own ministries 3 ways. With fresh moments. With fresh moments. That's why we want to offer teaching like this, training. We want to try to inspire you, encourage you. If there's anything we can do, if you're like, man, I need this resource in my life. If you need to come to us and say, what book do I need to be reading right now to kind of reignite this in my life? We'll give you a resource, right? We want to give you fresh eyes. Hopefully this day has given you new tools by which to evaluate your ministry or your business or whatever you're doing or your the way you handle your family and your family time. And then we want to give you fresh fun, which is why Angel wears a mustache. And the mustache falls off. And then falls on her face, and then we get on video. You can build a team one of 2 ways. You can build it out of crisis. Oh, we need people. We're desperate for people. We got to have people right now. And there's kids everywhere. I don't know what to do. And there's people coming, and we need more people to come. You can do that, or you can build it out of fun. Come be part of something incredible, right? We choose fun. And so we want to keep having fun. Hopefully this was helpful to you. That's a little bit about ladder focus. A lot of you feel like all I do is hold the ladder, and I hope by the end of the day, of today, you feel like all you do is hold the ladder, and that's a big deal, right? You determine how high the leaders can go. By the way, you also determine if the ladder is even leaning on the right building, which is also helpful. You keep us on focus and prioritized, and we can't do, like I said, like 1,100 and some people at this campus last week. Harrisburg had 156 people last week. It took 158, excuse me. There were 2 dogs there. Harrisburg ran out of chairs. We had to talk to we said, we'll buy more chairs. They said, no, we got them at another school, but we just can't believe you need them already. So they brought 100 more chairs over. We have to set up more chairs. We're probably going to have to go to 2 services soon at Harrisburg, and they've been at church for like 5 minutes, okay? I remember when we hit 150 people, it was like 4 months into the life of our church. Phil Wiseman was out at our family camp leading worship. I texted him. We broke 150. He told our district superintendent. They announced it at family camp. It was that big of a deal that 4 months in, these guys have had, 5 weeks of services? 5 weeks, 156 people, 158 people, 2 dogs. This cannot happen. Our worship team has effectively been cut in half because we're doing this, right? Our kids staff, our prayer team, do you think it's any accident at all that basically our prayer team got picked clean, that meets here on Sunday morning? Picked clean. The Sunday Harrisburg left, we had 2 people. Because they were all so focused in prayer. Guess what? They ended up at Harrisburg. Thanks a lot, right? But God's already restoring it, refilling it. And those are people who hadn't done it, maybe wouldn't have done it, except now they're feeling like, oh, there's a need, right? Folks, this stuff is so, so important. And we can't do what we do without you. We just can't. So thank you. Thanks for letting us pour into you. If this is important to you, if you feel like these times are valuable to you, the best thing you can do is tomorrow at church, brag to everybody you serve with. I can't believe you missed it. Oh, yeah. And they gave away stuff, and Angel fell on her face and her mustache, and the teaching was okay, and it was just brag on it, because we want this to be volunteer, but we want it to be 500 people, 600 people, 700. We want to just pour into your life, okay? Will you do that for me? So I'm going to close this in prayer. And then I'm going to invite you to go to your breakout groups. Again, if you know where your breakout groups are, great. If you don't, if you're like, do I have a breakout group? You don't. Basically, you would know by now, probably. If you need to catch your leader in the lobby and ask him, you can. If you don't have a breakout group, I want to invite you to do something. Monday night, we had our elder team meeting, and we met together and we prayed, and then we came over here to the building, and we went down in the basement, and we gave the elders Sharpies, and the basement is at the point where all the rooms are studded out. And just like, you may not know, this back wall right here is full of the prayers of the people of this church. Like, there are names represented on the studs in those walls that now come to this church. Okay? And our elders came in on Monday and they wrote their hearts out on the different rooms. So when we're done here, I want to invite you, if you don't have a breakout, and then if you do have a breakout, I think your leader's going to invite you to come do this afterwards. If you want to come down, we're just going to give you a Sharpie, and I'm going to give a short, like a 5-minute, okay, this is what this room's going to be, this is what this room's going to be, and give you the ability to write a prayer over the 1st through 5th graders, and over the pre-K, and over the life group rooms, and the prayer rooms, and the closet area. And those prayers will forever be in the walls. And this is the week we got to do it, because they're going to be closing those walls up probably in the next 2-3 weeks, right? For or a month. So this is an opportunity for the volunteer leaders of this church to say, yeah, I want to pray over this church. So if you want to do that, just meet me out in the lobby over here in about 5 minutes after this, and we'll go downstairs and I'll give you a look, and then I'll give you a Sharpie, and we'll just cover the place in prayers. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, thanks for how you mold us. Thanks for how you sharpen us. Thanks for how you make us better. God, we'll never be made better by a leadership principle heard in a room. We'll be better when we say, God, what do you have in that for me? And we take it back to the ministry that you've called us to, and we apply it in a way that sets captives free. When we make leadership about redemption, then we win. Then you win. And so, Father, I pray that everything we do in leadership for you. I pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thanks, guys.